Well, welcome to the Foster Tuncurry Church of Christ this afternoon and to anyone who's viewing us online. My name is Brett, as many of you probably know, and I'm the pastor here. And I just want to offer my sincerest condolences to you guys as a family, to this whole family. It's been an extremely, extremely hard time for you all, a couple of months, added with the frustrations of all the COVID restrictions and all that kind of carry on top of your grieving for your three family members. So I want to say sorry to you guys, and I want to say that it's an honour for me to be invited into this process with you. We've gathered here to both remember the life and grieve the loss of Maurice James Creevey. We come here with mixed emotions, perhaps not exactly sure how to feel, because Maurice was a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, and a friend. Many times spent with him in these contexts will be cherished for many of you. And as we sit here grieving our loss, our minds cannot help but to be flooded with all the special memories that we have of Maurice that have been shared over time. And memories are so precious because they live on with us, even though Maurice is no longer with us. The death of someone close to us reminds us both of our own mortality and of others that we have loved and lost. We're also over here with us today. And although death separates us from those that we love, they live on in our hearts, minds, and memories, and their presence may be felt in old, familiar places. So as we share these precious moments and memories together today, as we release our negative experiences and put to rest our pain, I invite you to join with me in saying the Lord's Prayer as requested by the family, which will be followed by the eulogy read by Anne Creevey. And the Lord's Prayer will be on the screen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Anne?
Dad, Jeff, Bradley, Ian, Mitchell, Linda, Tane. Where's James? Siobhan, Ian Lee. 10 of us, eh? Just 10. I've written this about Dad. And to our online viewers out there, welcome. To Auntie Claire and family in America watching, welcome. Maurice James Creevey, our dad, born on the 26th of November 1937 in Tamworth, New South Wales, to parents Arthur Creevey and Mary Barnes. Dad spent his early years with Uncle Andy Barnes and Granny Barnes on the family farm in Moonby, just north of Tamworth. Dad helped out on the farm with his younger sister Claire, picking fruit and feeding the chickens. It was Dad's job to make the toffee apples for the fruit shop in Corindi, Wallabada and the roadside fruit store. Living and working on a chicken farm, Dad ate chicken for almost every meal. Needless to say, I never saw my father eat anything chicken in my life. Dad attended Moonby Public School, Tamworth High School and Corindi Intermediate High School, where he gained first place in mathematics, physics, chemistry in his intermediate school exams. Dad started his electrical apprenticeship with Tamworth Council in 1954. My father's electrical tradesman in charge, Charlie Sturgis, is my husband's uncle, Jeff. Dad would always enjoy telling his funny yarns, or this funny yarn. Unknown persons would steal the farm tractor and drive it down the road and leave it abandoned. Dad's brilliant solution to stop the theft was to wire the metal tractor seat to the ignition coil. So when attempting to key start the tractor, a high electrical voltage would pass through the metal seat. Let's say the tractor was never stolen again. When we were young, we went for holidays to Uncle Andy's farm in Moonby. I can always remember the peach orchards, the trees overflowing with extra large, juicy, ripe peaches. So yum. When riding on the tractor, Ian, Lynn sat on the mudguards and I sat in Dad's lap at the steering wheel. When Dad completed his apprenticeship, he moved to the inner city suburb of Redfern, Chippendale, to live with his mother, Grandma Creevey. Grandma was a conductress on the Sydney Tram network. Dad started attending the local Petersham Town Hall dances. This is where Dad and Mum met. They were married at Regent's Park on the 24th of November 1962. Dad started work for the Prospect County Council, now Integral Energy, in 1963 as a high voltage electrical systems operator out of the Seven Hills depot. He would say to us, "If you touch that, it's one flash and you're ash." In 1963, my brother Ian was born at Bankstown Hospital. In 1966, Lynn was born, and me in 1969 at Fairfield Hospital. Dad enjoyed playing hockey when he was younger, a game of golf on occasions. He took himself to see Tiger Woods play. However, 10-pin bowling was Dad's thing. He would play in a 10-pin bowling league every week, sometimes twice a week, from 1981 to 2006. Many a trophy with winner and high scorer sat in his man cave. There were Dad's rules in our house. If you were sick and stayed home from school, you had to stay in bed. Definitely no eating or drinking in the car. No television if there was no TV guide. No flicking between the channels. Turn the light off when you were finished. No dessert if you did not eat your dinner. And in bed by 8:30. However, when Dad worked afternoon shift from 3 to 11, Mum would let us stay up to watch the TV. The headlights shining through the front window, Ian, Lynn and I would do the Harold Holt off to bed before Dad got in the front door. Dad would often help us all with our maths homework. He was good at explaining and solving technical algebra equations. Dad was always rigging up gadgets. His solution to the automation of closing the back roller door was to hang two large, very heavy lead sinkers on a pulley rope that would pull the door closed. When the control dial on Mum's washing machine broke, Dad rewired the circuit with a double light switch, enabling 6 different wash cycles. It was very ingenious. Dad was an amateur radio operator. His call sign is VK2EMC, Echo Mike Charlie. He spoke to many ham radio operators around the world over the years. Different radios for different frequencies equals different aerials. Aerials just seemed to grow on the roof of our house. Dad would install his amateur radio in the car. If we came across a motor vehicle crash or a breakdown, before the days of mobile phones, Dad would use the ham radio to call for assistance. I would listen to him talking over the radio. This is where I learnt both the use of a two-way radio, the phonetic alphabet, and very basic Morse code. We would always go on a holiday. Most often our destination would be Foster. However, when Dad bought the VW Combi camper, we travelled everywhere, from the south coast to the north coast of New South Wales, through Victoria, South Australia, and up north to far north Queensland. Dad took us fishing a lot. He taught us to rig up, hook, line and sinker. I can remember our young years, being in a fishing boat on the Hawkesbury River. Lynn saying to Dad, "It's pulling, Daddy, it's pulling." Dad's answer, "Wind your line in." Lynn struggled to wind in the rounded small cork hand line because on the end of the fishing line was a very large flathead. He would take Ian and I deep sea fishing with his work fishing club and out in his runabout in the Georges River, Botany Bay and in Sydney Harbour. I was always looking over Dad's shoulder when he was tinkering or fixing the car. both mechanically and the auto electrics. I would be the first to ask if I could help him out. His mate even offered me a motor mechanic apprenticeship. This very basic mechanical knowledge came in handy when I broke down on my way to the police academy and at other various times. I learnt to drive a car at an early age, and one afternoon, when Dad was walking past a sharp piece of sheet metal, it sliced his leg open. He instructed me to drive him to Fairfield Hospital. I was about 15 at the time and didn't hold my learner's permit. He said, "Don't worry, we won't get pulled over. You are too good of a driver." My first car was a Datsun 1000cc coupe. Dad swapped the engine for a 1200cc and tuned it to a twin-barrel Weber carburettor. It used to go like the clappers and ran on the smell of an oily rag. At 16, Lynn fell pregnant with his first granddaughter, Linda. Dad was not impressed. However, Linda soon won him over with her cute smile, and Lynn was back living at home with Linda by the time she turned 21. In 1988, we moved to Roos in the Campbelltown area. Dad continued working for Integral Energy out of the Minto depot. In his later years, he went to the electrical distribution control room for the Outer Sydney and Blue Mountains at Eastern Creek until his retirement in 1998, after 35 years' service. He had the power to turn your lights on and off at the flick of a switch. In 1998, Dad and Mum sold up and moved to Foster to enjoy the twilight years. For a retirement present, Dad bought himself a fishing boat. He and his mates towed it up to Darwin for the ultimate boys' trip. Each school holidays, I would take Mitchell and Bradley up to Foster to see their grandparents. We would always have a day out in the boat. Dad joined the Coastal Patrol, it was called back then, now Marine Rescue. He volunteered for over 15 years as a radio operator. He helped direct the aerials and install radios at the new Marine Rescue Base and the rescue boats. Dad received the National Medal for Service and the Marine Rescue Long Service Medal for his devotion to the organisation. In 2010, Lynn moved to Foster and became Mum and Dad's carer. Dad always had a veggie garden on the go, growing his favourite tomatoes, cucumbers and green beans. He enjoyed pottering around the yard, attending to his veggie garden. He showed me several times how to prune a fruit tree. I've still got no idea. Dad always bought a weekly lotto ticket, never winning the big one. Whenever Dad went out, he would have to be home by 4, as 4 o'clock was beer o'clock. Dad enjoyed telling a yarn or two. A couple of Dad's favourite sayings were, "All aboard," when we go out in the car, and when saying goodbye, it was hooroo. Dad was a father of 3 to us, a grandfather to 5, a great-grandfather to 6, and a great-great-grandfather to 1. Dad and Mum were married for 58 years. I would like to add, it has been 22 weeks since Mum has passed, 13 weeks since Lynn has passed, and now Dad just 9 days ago. I would like to take this opportunity to express my absolute sincere thank you for the support and love we have received from all our extended family, to my husband Jeff, to my mum's friends, to my sister's friends, who have been by my side and wrapped me in their loving, caring hearts, to the Foster Tuncurry Church of Christ congregation, Pastor Brett Clark, Vera Goodrich and Luke Kershaw. I am eternally grateful. Thank you from my heart. The world truly is a beautiful place.
Thank you for that, Anne. We're now going to have some reflections from Ian Creevey, Linda Thompson, and then from Claire Helfer, which will be read by Anne.
Hello to everybody, and it's a shame that we've only got 10 people here to witness a very sad occasion. What I remember of my father was always fishing. I remember once we had kingfish, and anyway, they said, what would you like the next night? And we all said, kingfish, Dad. That was great. That was delicious, mate. We had these like patty things. He said, guess what, son? We're going to have snapper. Anyways, he went down to the Chinese shop and he sweet and soured it. Anyway, guess what? Every bit of that fish was gone. If we could have eaten the plate with it, we would have eaten the plate with it. Another time, sister and me, we went down to Jervis Bay, and we went fishing. And we went right out as far as the lighthouse. It was almost out in the deep sea. We caught nanny guy. Wow, it was good. We caught many fish and got sick. We had to come back in. Ian says, guess what? I don't get sick, Dad. Well, guess what? Next time, Dad and son goes out in the boat. Ian's spewing over the side of the boat. And Dad said, didn't you say you wouldn't get sick, son? And I said, yep, you're right. So I remember that day as clear as anything. Yes, I can remember going out to golf with my dad quite a bit. My ex-wife used to pick up all the golf balls, and we got into trouble for picking up all the golf balls because they weren't our golf balls. And everybody was looking for their golf balls. Dad said, stick it in your pocket, son, walk out of here. So, anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, but I'd also like to thank my wife, who's also stuck by me at this present moment. She's in the car, and unfortunately she wasn't able to come in here. So thank you, guys. Melissa and John, well, they would like to say condolence to the family. And anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there, but that's all I can say. So thank you, guys.
First of all, I'd like to say hello, Auntie Claire, family in America. Thank you. Please bear with me. Grandad, the most intelligent man I know. As I stand here with flooding memories of you, Grandad always had a pen, fisherman's friends, and a hanky in his pocket, and tinkering with something. You were always fixing something with your hands, whether it be electrical, cars, or radios, or attending to your vegetable garden. I heard many times, you can come in, but don't touch anything, as I knocked on the garage door. So I went in and was just happy to sit there and watch him fiddle around with screwdrivers and soldering irons, explaining what each dot of silver was for, pretending I understood, but in awe of his handiwork of fixing 99.9% of things he put his mind to. Grandad, thank you for helping to raise me and all that you've done. I'm the first granddaughter from my mum, Lynn, who is the middle child of Morris and Alyssa. They had 3 children, Ian, Lynn and Anne. 2 granddaughters, Melissa and myself, and 3 grandsons, Mitchell, John and Bradley. And I gave them 6 grandchildren, Ian, Lee, Siobhan, Tane, James, Averly and Ivory. And I was so lucky you got to see your great-great-granddaughter, Evelyn, my granddaughter. I usually knew by the time I walked inside from Nan, picking me up from school and bringing me home, if Grandad was at home, if he was asleep, as you could hear him snoring like a steam train as soon as you walked through the door. If he had night shift. Grandad worked many hours doing shift work, but if I didn't hear him, I would always go down and see Grandad was in the garage. He spent most of his time in the garage. If he wasn't at work, fishing, or at the dining table for lunch or dinner, that was routine ritual timing that Nan didn't miss. Grandad was a stickler for routine. Now that I recall, I'm not sure if that was Nan or Grandad, but we always knew lunch and dinner time and worked for them. Almost 60 years of marriage proved it. I think I was about 12 when I saw Grandad in the kitchen making a soup for the first time. I was extremely surprised, to say the least, but his lunch was a teaspoon of Vegemite in some boiling water with toast. My childhood memories of sitting in the garage with you for hours, playing on the computer, riding my bike, repeatedly saying, "Grandad, look! Grandad, look!" playing table tennis or throwing the ball to the dog Randwick, or chatting about radios pretending I understood, hearing Nan yell out, "Dad! Linda! Cooey!" Oh, how much I miss those days. Grandad would give me $20 sometimes and say, "Shh, go to the shops and get some lollies." I'm sure that's when he had enough of me eye-gazing him, watching his every move. Now I think probably stalkerish. You were a magician when it come to doing anything with your hands, whether it be working on radios, cars, fixing things, or even bringing Nan's charcoal pots back looking better than the day she bought them. I love you, Nan. I lived with my late Nan and Grandad for many, many years, most of my childhood. I always just knew to behave, especially when he was around. I didn't want to let my Grandad down. We often went on train rides together to Redfern, Sydney to see Grandma, his mum. Grandma lived in the heart of Redfern, right near the station. I loved going there to see all Grandma's animals. She always had dogs and cats and feeding the wild animals and picking up strays and injured animals. She was well known as the animal lady of Redfern. I always felt like I was a big girl travelling with Grandad. I knew once Grandad got his big blue jacket out, he was gone for a couple of days. He loved his fishing and went on many trips to do some deep sea fishing. The freezer always had a fish or two, and his spirit lives on in my middle son, Tane, who loves fishing. I remember asking, "Can you take me deep sea, Grandad?" As an adult now and understanding, thank you for not taking me, Grandad. I couldn't think of anything more green and stomach curdling with a boat rocking and waves crashing. He was one of the head honchos for Prospect Electricity, which changed its name to Energy Australia. He was the network control manager, and his last office before retiring, after years of service, overlooked Oran Park Speedway. I was so excited when Nan would take me to see Grandad at work. I was always amazed at his big desk and a button on his desk. He said, "Do not press that. All the lights in Australia would go out." I remember he would come home with pens, pencils and paper for me for school, and once I felt so important, he came home with a hat with his work logo on it. I wore it to school. People weren't so interested in my excitement over my hat, but I felt special. I always remembered as a child to be good for Grandad, as he has the power of turning off my lights, and everyone else's for that matter, and being scared of the dark didn't help. Thank you. Then you helped and put the radios together for Foster Maritime and volunteered many hours, years and hours, when my grandparents moved to Foster in 1998. A little poem for my Grandad. Grandad, I just want you to know you mean the world to me. Only a mind as great as yours taught me so many things that I could be. The many things you done and fixed, all the times you were there to assist. Help me know deep down inside you were there and how much you really cared. You didn't like too much fuss and not to take life in a rush. But one thing I know, I always had you to discuss, to help me to adjust. I was lucky to have you by my side and always enjoyed the ride. Oh, how blessed I was, I had you by my side. You are with your dear wife, my nana, and my mum again. And out of pain. I'm sorry. I love you, Grandad, so very much. And although you're with Nan and Mum now, you will be dearly missed. Forever. Please give my mum and my Nan a big cuddle. And a kiss for me. And tell her I love her. I love you, Grandad. To say my world has been rocked is an understatement. My Auntie Anne, you truly are a kind, caring inspiration for all that you have done these last few years, looking after my mum, my nan and Grandad, and putting your own life on hold. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, from my family and myself, and from Grandad. Grandad's words, you truly are an amazing woman. Grandad had a funny way of showing love to us and felt uncomfortable giving hugs, but he did so rigidly. And although I often said I love you, Grandad, I didn't hear it back. But I would get, okay, sweetheart, and I just knew that was his way of saying it. Grandad, I will miss your jokes, your riddles, sometimes cheeky with your sense of humour. But for now, it's time to say "Urdu" and find some comfort in knowing I was Grandad's sweetheart. Fly high, Grandad. Love you yesterday, love you today, love you always and forever. Thank you, Auntie. Thank you, Uncle.
I think that we've all got to be thankful for one thing, that Granddad was able to live a pretty well healthy life right up until the end. His cancer was there, but overall, he wasn't in excruciating pain. And today, he's come to join my mum. So for that, and he was able to drive a car up until the last days. And I think that is one of the good things in life for my father. Because I tell you, he didn't spend any time in a nursing home, and neither did my mum. And I think that this is one of the best things for them. So overall, they've led a fairly healthy life up until the end. I've also got to thank a couple of other people that probably you guys don't know, that were with me and Thelma, and that was Cheryl, Tess, and the other Tess, and Peter and Noel. They have been really good for us in Sydney. Thelma as well. But overall, we've all got to be thankful that he was able to live his life mostly, and able to drive his car, and able to do the things he wants, as well as Mum. And for that, we've got to be thankful as well. Thank you.
A message from the Helfer family. The Helfer family is Auntie Claire, that's Dad's younger sister, Jeff, his nephew, Greg, his nephew, Janet, and their families. Memories of Uncle Morris. I'm Uncle Morris's American nephew, Jeff. Thank you for allowing me to share a few memories about my Uncle Morris. Some memories are my own. My mum told me about my Uncle Morris too. I'd like to share some of her memories as well. As all who knew him understood, Uncle Morris always did his bit, and he was very much about family. Earlier this year, I thanked him for all he did for my mother Claire, brother Greg, sister Janet, and I, when we were at Grandma Mary's place in Redfern. He modestly replied, "That's what families are for." Uncle Morris studied to be an electrician from a young age. So when my mum was living on the Creevey property in Moonbi, Uncle Morris installed an electrical outlet in her room. That's so she could use an electrical heater and not be cold during the New England tableland winters. Later, when my mum was about 16 years of age, she and Uncle Morris picked grapes together for many days in the hot sun on their Uncle Andy's farm in Moonbi so they could pay for train tickets to Sydney. Uncle Morris and Mum used to go fishing together. One time, they fished a little too close to the Royal Yacht in Sydney Harbour and were paid a visit by the security details. After inquiries were made, they were allowed to keep fishing. Mum was bridesmaid at Uncle Morris and Auntie Alyssa's wedding. Uncle Morris drove Mum to her wedding in 1965 and gave her away at her ceremony. A few days later, Mum left Australia with my dad. When Mum returned to Australia with us three children in the mid-70s, she had problems with her green card, an immigration document necessary to enter the United States, as it was called back then. So, for about 6 months, we lived in four to a room in Redfern, sleeping in 2 double bunks. Uncle Morris was kind enough to include the 4 of us in his family activities. For example, he took us to Bondi Beach. We also had a picnic by a river and were promised that we would be eaten by sharks if we actually went in. I remember playing with my cousins in the backyard of Uncle Morris's house in Fairfield, and I too remember Auntie Alyssa sprinkling the sheets with water so we could be cooler when sleeping during the hot summer nights. Uncle Morris took us in a car, trailer in tow, all the way up to Uncle Andy's farm in Moonbi, where we stayed for a while. It was still a working farm then, and a beautiful property. Thanks to the generosity of Uncle Morris, we got to see and do many fun and interesting things in Australia. A few years ago, I attended a funeral in Los Angeles. During the service, the speaker said, Now what was not done must remain undone. That doesn't apply here. Uncle Morris did a lot for a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for what Uncle Morris did for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for those memories. I invite you now to look at the screen as we're going to look at some pictures of Morris's life.
I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the whine, and the Wichita lineman is still on the line. I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain, And if it snows, that stretch down south won't ever stand the strain. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line.
Traveling in a fried-out Combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady, she made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. And she said, do you come from a land down under, where women glow and men wonder? Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. Buying bread from a man in Brussels. He was 6'4" and full of muscle. I said, do you speak my language? He just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich. And he said, I come from a land down under, where Peter's flow and mentioned. Can you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. Yeah.
I want to thank you again for the opportunity to offer some words for this funeral today. Now, I personally have only met Morris once. However, after meeting many of you over the past few months in obviously devastating circumstances, I would imagine that he was proud of the family that he had. He may or may not have known how to express that pride, but as a father myself, when I look at my kids, no matter how they're behaving or misbehaving, how frustrated I'm feeling at them, I'm still proud that they are my kids, even if I don't say it at the time. Now again, I'm not going to pretend to know who Morris was as a person, but you each have your own experiences and opinions of him, and instead today I want to speak to you all about hope. So in general, hope means to desire for things to change for better and to want that better situation very much. I believe that there is hope within this family for things to change for the better after everything you've been through over the past 20 or so weeks. Hope is one of those things that we all have, even if we don't acknowledge it. We put our hope in different places, different people, different things. So I wonder, where or what are we putting our hope in over this hard time? Is it in our achievements? Is it in stuff? Is it in our abilities? Is it in being busy and being distracted? Hope is the kind of thing that brings light into darkness. And when it's all dark around you, there's that pinprick of light, and it gives you something to hope for. A hope of something to come that is not the darkness. In the Bible, Jesus says in the book of John, I've come as light into the world so that everyone who believes in me will not remain in darkness. So for people who believe in Jesus, there is hope that the current situation we find ourselves in is not the end. There is hope that our anxieties, the darkness, the mourning, that doesn't need to control our lives. There is hope that even when things are tough, just as you have all experienced recently, there is something else to look forward to. And if you choose to trust in Jesus, he offers you the hope of life forever, life past your current circumstances, life out of the darkness, life without anxiety, and life lived to the full. Now, for many people in your family, they've put their hope in Jesus. But that doesn't mean that life is easy. It doesn't mean that you don't experience anxiety, fear, or grief. What hope does is it provides that pinprick of light that the current circumstances of darkness do not have to control us and define our lives. My hope is that Morris knew this. We never know what happens between a person and Jesus at the end, but we can have hope that he had a conversation with him. So my encouragement to us all today is to put our hope into the living person of Jesus, who can provide true hope as we continue on through our lives, through the grief, through the pain, and into the future. I now would like to invite you to stand as we say our final farewell to Morris. We now commit Morris's body to be cremated. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We rejoice that he lived. With love, we leave him in peace. With respect, we say farewell. We commit his soul to God's just and loving care. In a moment, if the pallbearers would like to come forward, and we will take Morris out of the building. And as Morris leaves, he'll be heading out to the song, The Linemen, by the band Steel.
Say there's a storm rolling in, a force we can't control, it's out of our hands. The feeling of danger rolls in the wind, and when it passes, the true work begins. No heat, no lights, no food anywhere. No gasoline for folks to get out of here. So many wires lying on the ground. The sun is going down on this worried little town. He's the man that puts his life on the line. He is the man we call time after time. Everybody calls the line. And don't forget those who did not come home that night. The ones who tried in vain, tried to make it right. The fallen lineman who paid the highest price. The unsung heroes who gave the line their life. They're the ones that put their lives on the line. They're the ones we call time after time. Through the rain, sleet and snow, they're ready to climb the pole. They're the ones everybody calls the line. Here's to you, everyone we call the line. They say there's a storm rolling in, a force we can't control, it's out of our hands. The feeling of danger grows in the wind, and when it passes, the true work begins. No heat, no lights, no food anywhere. No gasoline for folks to get out of here. So many wires lying on the ground. The sun is going down on this worried little town. The man that puts his life on the line. He is the man we call time after time. Through the rain, sleet and snow, he's ready to climb the pole. He's the man everybody calls the line. He leaves his home to face danger on the line, always knowing he may not come back this time. There's a family that waits for him back home, praying he'll return so they're not left alone.